Lonely Monk Productions. I don't know if y'all have heard Beth Has Secrets by Kamoy yet, but yo.
That's my Jawn! Hey yo, displace the guilt and
What's good, friends and family, neighbors near and far? Welcome to an all-new episode of the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast. The podcast, website, brand, movement, way of life dedicated to the embrace and championing of your passions. I am your host, Nate Runkle, a.k.a. Jawn Adams, a.k.a. Jawn Hart, a.k.a. John Morton, a.k.a. John Penn, a.k.a. John Hancock. Do you get it? They're all the Johns who signed the Declaration of Independence, a.k.a. Nate 3.0, back at it again with yet another episode of the podcast. As always, I hope this podcast finds you all in good health and in good spirits. Today, I chat with Eliot Greene of the Visible Project. We have an awesome chat about community and the changing dynamics of funding creative endeavors and how the Web3 space can be used to build both. And that is coming up in a bit. Well, what's the haps, people? A very happy 4th of July to you and to yours. I hope it is full of festive cookouts and fireworks and all things good, or was, depending on when you listen to this, or will be, in my case alone. Yes, it's the 4th of July and it is cookout time. You know, what's your go-to cookout food? You know, mine's hot dogs, legit. If not for the forced bun eating, I could fuck up the Nathan's Hot Dog competitive eating contest. Have you ever watched that? You know, how they have to dunk the rolls in the water to huff them down? Fuck that. That alone would make me vomit. The hot dog eating part of it all, though? Yo, I am your huckleberry there, no doubt. The bun, not so much. I love me some hot dogs, but more specifically, you cook that hot dog on a grill. And dog, you better be putting multiple packs on because I am feasting on those. And of course, 4th of July fireworks are a thing. Are you guys all firework people? Team Katy Perry and whatnot out there feeling like a plastic bag? Yeah, I can dig a good display like the next guy, but I'm not easily impressed. I need to know that you put some thought into it. I need my fireworks to tell a story. I need good music to go along with it. I need you to just do a scotch more than just blow shit up in the air. You feel me? I like a variety of colors. I like large plumes. But those quick, flashy, loud ones, yeah, it's not for me, really. Use them very sparingly. Though, I guess I should note, those used to terrify me as a kid. Yeah, I was one of those children whose parents had to have them in the car with the windows up to be able to enjoy fireworks, namely because of the big, flashy boom boom ones. So, yeah, I think a little of that unease is baked into my DNA. There's probably some correlation that exists between my dislike of those and my revulsion to the sound of balloons popping. Yeah, I don't know. I'm off on a tangent here. God, stop judging me. All I'm saying is I like a good firework display like anyone else, but I have my own little quirk, so stop judging me. I will not let you shame me like this. You're so mean. So one of the primary things that Eliot and I discuss are NFTs in the cryptocurrency Web3 space. And I know it's a new and frightening place full of scams and schemes, and I won't pretend that it isn't. But Eliot is now the second person I have talked to on here about NFT projects, G Love being the first. And I just feel like I need to kind of say something up front. I'm not telling you guys to go invest in crypto. Do your own research. If you find something that speaks to you, cool. If you don't. These projects and the people I'm having these conversations with on the show, they're people and projects that I personally believe in. In the case of G Love, to me, his projects are similar to like a non-recurring Patreon account. And with Eliot and the Visible Project, this is more akin to like Kickstarter in that the funding is going to back a film project voted on by the community. We obviously get into more of the specifics during our conversation, but independent cinema is very important to me. Film is a love that's almost parallel to my love of music, and we live in a world where it is getting harder and harder to finance music and film projects. I don't believe that these are get-rich Ponzi schemes. These are people trying to solve a financial problem through an emerging technology. All of that is to say, if you hear the words NFT or crypto and you feel your eyes start to roll into the back of your head, I get it. and I respect that. But I believe that this conversation that we have is an interesting look into a possible way for independent cinema to survive in the world of studios trying to mine any piece of IP they can get their hands on. And honestly, I hope you agree. If you're joining us for the first time here, make sure you follow us on the socials at Yo That's My Jawn and check out our website at www.yothat'smyjawn.com. You can sign up for our new mailing list. Well, not right now, but shortly it'll be up there and you can sign up for it. We're going to start sending updates and behind the scenes stuff to keep you informed on all the cool goings on. And I promise I will never, ever spam you. That would be super lame. And honestly, I really just don't have that kind of focus. My ADD would never, ever allow that. My guest today is a strategy coordinator for ICM Stellar Sports. Earlier this year, he co-founded Habitat Labs, a company focused on development and strategy solutions for the Web3 space. This role led him to partnering with Spike Lee on the Visible Project, a Web3-based project founded on the goals of democratizing the content greenlight process for creators and film fans, and creating a valuable use case for NFTs that allows filmmakers, both veteran and new, direct access to financing and to community. Folks, it is my honor to welcome to the show, Eliot Greene.
Give it a few seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined today by the great Eliot Greene. Eliot, thank you for joining me here on Yo, That's My Jawn.
Thanks, Nate. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. You know, we were kind of just chatting about it, but for the listeners, Eliot and I kind of converse over the Discord for the Visible Project, which we're here to talk about today, eventually at some point. But so this is like the first time we've gotten to kind of actually speak in real time and not typing it out. So it's pretty cool to be able to pull this off.
I think one of the really cool things about like our community, these communities in general, Web3 and otherwise, putting people together, finding times to speak and hold space and, explore different ideas and creativity. So I am, as I said, very excited to be here.
It's so cool. Yeah. You know, it is true. Like the community building, I think, is one of the most interesting things to me about all of these projects is because I've been in projects that just don't work. And, you know, and 98% of those that don't work is just because the community isn't there, you know, so it is very democrative that way in that, like, you know, if it's kind of the opposite, if they come, you can build it, you know,
Yes. And well, to that point, I think part of it is the lack of, for the projects that don't succeed. And I think there's a litany of reasons as to why that happens. But to your point, the lack of sort of building value based on feedback from that community is really important. And listening to what people want through the lens of whatever that project is, something that obviously we'll talk about it, but what we try to do is, have a broader overarching vision and then incorporate the things that people want, from entertainment, from the film and TV space that, we're not really getting anymore, or maybe never have.
Yeah, it's definitely true. It's definitely true. So let's hop in the Wayback Machine and visit a very tiny Eliot. Where did you grow up?
I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, in the city of Boston. I know a lot of people say from Boston, and there's a whole host of suburbs around there. I grew up, my family, we actually moved 13 times in and around Boston. I think part of the reason was my mother loved to take stock of the things we had and move on to a new spot, but we didn't move far.
Yeah. Same school district on those moves, or?
Same school district on those moves. I should say between elementary school, same, high school, same, things like that.
Yeah, sure.
I actually went to an all boys high school. I wore a coat and tie every single day. I had every hour of my day rigorously regimented from like 6:50 in the morning until honestly 8:00 at night with sports and plays and, stuff like that. And so for me, when I began looking at, colleges, taking sort of the next step in my education, suddenly the number one priority to me was like, how can I have complete ownership over my schedule?
Yeah.
How can I, determine the things that I want to do. So, it came from sort of that like semi regimented background to I mean, now, working in Web3, there's no playbook. There is no set of rules and guidelines to follow. So, yeah, I think it's funny now that you sort of like bring that up, thinking about what's the path to get from there to here.
Yeah. What did your folks do?
So my mom is a writer.
Oh, very cool.
And for a long time, she went from being like copywriter to she wrote books and plays, and most of them like self-published, things like that. My dad ran a small business, started out pre-tech boom. He was basically building, everything from like when you walk into a bank and you see merchandise in front of, so it's called merchandising management. But what it is if you're running an ad campaign and it's like low APR and a home loan, they will create these physical poster boards and the plastic that comes with it. It's really sort of a nitty gritty, like going around up and down the Eastern Seaboard. My dad would travel, pretty much every day. And the promise he made to my mom was that, because he had me and I have two older brothers that are twins, 8 years older than me. And he always said, I'm going to be home by dinner. And so he would literally wake up 6:30 in the morning, take the shuttle from Boston Logan down to whatever city he was going to. And he would be on the, 5:30 p.m. shuttle back. And then around 2000, the tech boom taking place, they sort of digitized that technology and brought in actually a really cool solution to basically allow for large brands that are based in major cities, and they have outposts, stores all around the country. How do you manage what those stores look like, right? How do you manage when you walk in and make sure that you have a consistent customer experience throughout? So what my dad built was basically this tool where, someone, a CMO sitting in a corporate office, could go to the Cambridge, Massachusetts store and look at the floor plan and actually see where people are going first and spending the most amount of time, and then put the things from their catalog in the right places to gain the maximum exposure. So that's what he did. And then, they are older now and live down in Naples, Florida, and are enjoying the next chapter of their life.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Like it's that kind of examining that kind of data. Is that like in your guys' blood or something? Because you did some data work as well, correct?
I've worn a couple different hats throughout my career at this point. Some of that probably could be attributed to just trying to figure out what to do, something that I just love to wake up in the morning and do. My dad didn't go to college, actually. So he, part of that reason was his father, ran a small business and was massively in debt right around the time my dad would have gone to college. And basically my dad said, you know what, I'm going to go and try to help you pull you out of debt. And he did that. And, by that point he was a little bit older and sort of moved on with his, his life to his next challenges. But, my mother has always prioritized education for us. And so, my two older brothers and I, worked hard in school to varying degrees of success for sure. And yeah, it's, I would say the data side of it isn't necessarily in my blood, just something I understand the value of and have tried to, sort of spend some time focusing on at various chapters.
That makes sense. When you were in your regimented high school, did you kind of have an idea or a dream of what you wanted to be, or what were you kind of focused on, like towards those last few years before graduating? So I wanted to be a news anchor. Yeah.
I thought that Brian Williams was the most trusted man in America. I always the hell out of him. I was like, my dad and I would watch the nightly news. When he came back and like right before dinner, the 7 p.m. news, 6:30 p.m. news, we'd put on Brian Williams. I wrote a little bit for the school newspaper. I thought about going to journalism school. Almost did go to journalism school, and then eventually, right around that time when sort of the rubber meets the road and you're making those decisions about like what direction you want to take your life, I realized I don't really want to just report on things. I'd like to try to provide some value around the margins of whatever it is I'm doing. Not that, by the way, that reporters don't do that. I think they hold a fundamentally valuable place in society. I think at the end of the day, for me, it was like, can I really just write articles every week? Am I even a good enough writer to do that? So I gave up the newspaper, newsman, TV reporter dream pretty quickly towards the end of my senior year of high school. And then when I went to college, I was a history major. So I think the most eloquent way I've heard someone describe a history major is that it's one where you learn how to learn. Now, that might be really just using flowery language to describe something that doesn't have a whole lot of prospects when you get out of college. But for me, it was, I've always loved American history, from inception has been something that I've basically still study to this day. East Asian, Southeast Asian history has always, for some reason, been, particularly valuable to me. And then I went to, I studied Chinese throughout my education, and I lived in Beijing briefly, and, had that experience as well. So like that culture and sort of the history of that culture as well is something that I really wanted to continue to explore in college. That's incredible. What brought you to Beijing? I was accepted into a program for people who had achieved the language to X level and were trying to get to 2X and 3X. And so I went pretty young age, actually. I was 16 when I lived there for 5 months. It was like this weird thing in between, semesters in the summer. And it was a wonderful experience. And I haven't been back since then. So it's been, years. Wow, that's amazing. Like, was that something you could truly appreciate at 16, or when you look back on it, or do you feel any regret or time wasted of what you could have gotten out of it, or do you think you got? Yeah, that's a great question. My Chinese for sure got better. Yeah, but I think that my ability to sort of understand and embrace culture, I wasn't necessarily mature enough at that time to like really know what it meant to live in a foreign country, in a foreign city. I think I try not to dwell too much on regret. Sure. Or, what would I do different in the past? Because I think there's just so much to do in the future here and going forward. But I would say it's a really valuable experience for anyone in that sort of formative age, as long as you go there with the right intentions. Yeah. Yeah, no, that definitely tracks. So you said you graduated and went to where did you go to college? I went to Brown University. Went to Brown. Okay. But before you graduated, and this is part of the research, you as a podcast host, you got to dig up all the good dirt. Tell me a little bit about this squash, this fourth place squash championship. Wow. Oh my God. You went back and found that. This is actually a seminal memory of my life because I was, I had some medical complications during my high school career, which sort of, it appeared like it was going to waylay me from being able to be an athlete. And, thanks to some great doctors, I was able to sort of persevere and, I can talk about, I don't feel any sort of way about that. I'm happy to talk about it. But the long story short is, we ended up, and so to be specific, it's actually not fourth place. We got third place. Okay. And what happened was, so it's the high school nationals for squash. I know a lot of people might not know what squash is. Think of it as it's a little bit similar to racquetball. We're seeing paddle tennis really popular lately. Squash is actually a very international sport, predominantly played on the East Coast of the United States. There are more courts per capita in the Middle East and in India than anywhere else in the world. And I think it was born in Harrow, England or something like that. But our team, it's one of my great, sort of memories from high school, because the squash team is 8 people. We travel, around the country to play, well, mostly up and down the Eastern Seaboard to play. And, for our team to sort of come in the top 5 of the nation that year, it's a very small school that we went to. There was 86 boys in a class, all boys school. We felt like we really did something out there. And by the way, I should say I was 7th of 7 on the team. I was at the bottom of the ladder. There's an 8th who's an alternate. I was not the alternate, but I was 7th on the ladder. But every point counts the same. A win is a win. So I hold that to be true.
That's cool. Like I am a connoisseur of kind of very specific, games and stuff like that. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, I definitely have to ask about it because like I this has come up in the podcast a few times, but I'm a disc golfer. So like
oh yeah.
So like I definitely appreciate like a good underground sport, if you will.
And there's some great courses I think around your area, right? For playing disc golf.
Yes, 100%. And they just keep adding new ones, and I love it. Oh, it's so great. I just played a tournament on Sunday, and you said you were 7 of 8. I placed 23rd out of 26. So,
but did you have fun?
I did have fun. I also split my pants though, so that was the highs and lows.
I didn't know there was that much movement in disc golf. So you're surprised.
Oh yes. It's a lot of bending. I was under a bush trying to putt out of some forestry, but that's what happens. So you go to Brown University. Was that your choice? Like, was that your primary choice?
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go to college. I actually, I live in Los Angeles now. I went and toured a college out here called Pomona, which is a very small college up in Claremont, California, which it's a really beautiful part of the world. If any of your listeners get a chance to check it out. And I almost went there. The only thing was they didn't let me in. So that's like a minor detail.
Yeah, that'll hold you back.
So, I ended up at Brown. I'm very happy about that. It was a great, educational experience for me. Polar opposite of my high school. Like you can take every class pass fail if you want at Brown. And in fact, there was a girl the year before me who took every class for her 4 years pass fail and then got into BC Law School. So I'm not sure if that says something about Brown's curriculum or BC Law School, but I'll leave that up for interpretation.
That's crazy. That would have been very helpful for me in college.
Yep. I will say that I did use that. I used that feature because it was there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you're not going to use it, it's going to waste, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
agreed.
Is it around this time that, also, again, I'm telling you the deep dive I did, was it around this time that you, interned for Joe Kennedy?
Yes, it is. Wow. Okay. See, I didn't even know that some of this stuff was publicly available information. So you're reminding me of, is it Nardwuar?
Yes.
It reminds me of Nardwuar. He meets the artist. There's an incredible video of him, I think, bringing up like J. Cole's first album or something. Something no one was ever supposed to see. But I have no problem with people knowing that I interned for Joe. So yeah, I've been, civically engaged throughout my life. I've actually worked on 3 different political campaigns. I never wanted to go into it professionally, but I always thought, they're usually you're not paid most often. You're doing a civic service. And I think you have to really believe in the candidate. In that instance, I certainly did and do.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Like that kind of world is something I'm very interested in, like the kind of campaign world, because like you said, like you have to do it from a place of love. For the essentially for the person you're selling or pushing for, and the more and more I study about candidates, the more and more I get interested in the people that work for them, and I feel like it kind of gives a better picture of who they are. Like
it's a really interesting sort of analogy to Web3 here, actually, which is if you create a project or you're a candidate creating a campaign, you have sort of these core, pillars that you want to stand on, but it's entirely the responsibility of the community. If you're Web3, of the interns and volunteers, if it's a campaign, to shepherd that out into the world. And the most successful campaigns and projects are really effective at first creating that groundswell of energy inside, and then finding ways to channel that for the outside world to come and join them. So, in some ways, I guess, even though I didn't go into politics, there are similarities.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you 4 years? Did you finish in 4 years?
Mm-hmm.
Look at you on time. I love it.
It got close there for a minute, but no, made it out. And I moved down to New York City. I became a consultant, which is when you really don't know that you don't know what you want to do.
Yeah.
when you go and you do. I did that for a couple of years, and it was a great experience. I consulted with a bunch of like Fortune 500 companies. By the way, can you hear this car alarm?
I can, but it's all right. It's not too distracting.
Sorry, can you please repeat your question?
Yeah. You were talking about moving down to New York, becoming a consultant.
Yep, consulted for some Fortune 500 companies. So my job as a consultant was to fire people. So I was George Clooney and Up in the Air, and it was horrible.
Yeah,
horrible.
I work management in my day job and whatnot, and that is literally like it never gets better. Like I thought like I would probably get cold to it at some point, but it doesn't. Like it is bad every time.
Yeah, you can imagine, 22-year-old kid like letting go. I remember I was working in a really prominent newspaper and letting go these. If they had tenure in newspapers, these would have been tenured reporters, 35, 40 years on the job. And so I did that, obviously like expressed my dismay for having been given that role within the ecosystem. Things sort of changed a little bit and moved on to some different projects. The best project I ever worked on was actually for Christie's Auction House, which is, the primary. It's Christie's and Sotheby's are the two major auction houses globally. And our job was to redesign their customer journey. Now, the short answer to that, the question is, how do you get people my age at that time and age now, basically anybody under the age of 45 to come into our auction houses and transact? Well, the short answer is you have to sell anything for less than $50,000. Right. And they were like, well, that's not on the table. So then we spent the next 6 months trying to come up with other solutions.
Yeah. What kind of ideas like were kicked around that were not used? Because that's
Sure. I think the best idea that we had that was like actually incorporated years after we finished the program was don't focus on the sales. Use it as a forum for gathering first. So basically you have these you have these auction houses that are essentially museums, but nobody goes into them because they think that they have to, if they're going to go in there, they have to buy something. So years after, Christie's started hosting like young professional nights, particularly in their New York office and in their London base. And they started getting unbelievable, not only access to, potential future buyers, but also artists who are coming in and like relating to the space, finding someone who worked at Christie's and saying like, hey, by the way, I have this collection, which opened for them, as I understand it, an entirely new, vertical of art to sell, to put into their ecosystem. The good thing about Christie's is they are all about innovation in a bunch of different ways. So they are one of the first to jump into Web3 and sell, high profile NFTs, Bored Apes and Beeples and things like that, in that forum. And I think to their credit, and we could talk about like the market cycles of Web3 and NFTs, but their stamp of legitimacy definitely helped power sort of that next, 6, 8, 12 months of bull market run, as I see it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like there's not, to me, as someone invested in Web3, there is nothing more exciting than when I hear like a major name has interest, because I'm just like, oh, okay, let me check this account real quick. Like it's always good. I mean, it's good for everybody. Like it legitimizes kind of a bit of the Wild West nature of it. Yes. and it's needed. Like it's really needed. Like because there's a lot of really bad projects out there, and yes, to be able to kind of differentiate and be able to recognize legitimacy is really key. Especially right now with people unsure of how to even get started in the space.
I agree with you. I think what's also interesting about it to me is that when you have people or brands with a name that holds weight, that when they begin to prioritize, something outside of just the floor price of their collection, it's that bizarre thing where just providing value around the margins, that allows a project's floor price to rise and the collection to succeed and the momentum to gather under it. And so I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's incredible. So not to jump around or anything, but how did you end up at ICM?
So, well, post consulting, I wanted to do something very different. And I was ready to, I've always loved, I mentioned that I was in plays growing up. My mom's a writer. I've always loved the arts, fundamentally tried to embrace and support, various types of art throughout my life. And then I thought, like, what if I try to make a business out of it? What if that could be my career? And so I went over to ICM because they had an opening in their TV literature department, film and TV literature. So that's the job of working with writers, essentially to, if it's TV, help them either get their pilots sold into a network and get picked up, or to find them a deal, writing on a show in a staffing room. With film, it's, slightly different. It's really about getting the right eyes on scripts and the right directors and actors to see scripts and want to attach themselves to it. For me, not loving art and entertainment, but not really understanding the business of it in any way, it became a ridiculous crash course in it. 12 months of just like taking information through a fire hose. And at a certain point, our business expanded, and we purchased a soccer agency. So, well, it's a sports agency with a huge focus on soccer, representing over 1,300 players in Europe and around the world. A lot of like real household names for fans. And I saw an opportunity in that space where, like in entertainment, what we're seeing is, first of all, sports is pre-NFTs was really like the last growing vertical. It was the one thing where we were seeing like just upward trajectory of growth in all facets of it. And second of all, the sort of combination, the melding of sports and storytelling becoming such an important thing in the space. I'd point to like Formula One Drive to Survive. If you've seen that, it's essentially a drama series that they've written, and they chop it together, by the way, and really sort of at times misrepresent people and what they say for the end goal of entertainment. But what that's done for that sport and sort of growing the national and international audience of that, can't be overstated. So I jumped from working with just TV and film writers over to the sports side. And then about 18 months ago, NFTs started coming along, and we started receiving, offers for our athletes to participate in different types of NFT collections or have their own. And it just sort of came out of nowhere, man. It was like, no one was talking about this. And then all of a sudden I had all these things on my desk that were from new upstart companies and, major investors getting into the space. And some of our athletes started saying like, hey, have you looked at this? Have you seen this? Some of our writers saying, have you looked at this? Have you seen this? Legacy Hollywood agencies are not always the first to like grab innovation and sort of position themselves in front of like the next chapter of what, content and commerce looks like. I think that a lot of Hollywood could probably be accused of that, rightfully so. What was great about ICM Partners was that they recognized the need to be agile in that space, particularly if something like this was growing. So, right around that time, I talked to the higher ups. I said, I think this is something we should be focusing on. And they allowed me to spend 100% of my time on this space. So, in that sort of, long winding road to eventually, working on the Visible project.
That's amazing. It's funny that kind of your entry point there, because I think some of the first NFTs I really heard about were like the NBA stuff, like was through sports. So yep. Like and then like you said, like it was everywhere out of like it went from, oh, that's an interesting thing. I wonder, because were you investing in crypto prior to all of that, or was that kind of your entry point into all of Web3?
So I'd been, throwing shekels into crypto for a couple of years. And NFTs, my first NFT that I ever purchased was an NFT box by this artist named Pranksy. And you would get the box, and then we now know this is part of like the reveal phase. And so understanding a little bit more about this space now, obviously, at the time, I just had this one NFT that said, it's like January 2020 or March 2021, NFT box. And then 3 days later, it's like explodes. And then inside of it, you have all this art from all these different artists. And I thought it was an unbelievable way to like get exposure to a bunch of different really talented artists that were starting to build in this space. And I just sort of dove in from there.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of correlated around the same time as ICM finding their interest in it. When you first started, it's first of all, amazing that they kind of believed in you enough to let you dedicate that much time into something like that. When you were kind of discussing with, athletes and stuff like that, though, was there any has there ever been any hesitation to kind of adapting it? Like, have you had to, gain someone's trust to be like, oh, just trust me on this and let's, or has everybody been, pretty open to it?
Well, just to your first point, it's like remarkable, stewardship of a business to sort of recognize when there are opportunities in the market that are developing. And if you have people on your team and they want to go chase them, it's a sign of, like, I think a really healthy business to be able to say, we can facilitate this. And, it's sort of like scratching a lottery ticket, right? Like, it could go really well. There's also the chance that it could go nowhere, and that's a bunch of lost productivity. So I am very grateful to them for like giving me that opportunity without a doubt. And to your point, I had to start by convincing them. Sure. And then I had to convince my MO with regards to, how I would bring this to clients of the agency was always from an educational point of view first. We would get approached by the major crypto platforms. So crypto.com, for example, would come to us and say, we want to work with X athlete or X creator, and we will pay them Y, and we will, facilitate all this stuff. And then really what we're trying to do is port their audience from their Instagram and their Twitter over onto our platform. And we understand the value of that today. That's why crypto.com has taken over the Staples Center, and it's the crypto.com arena. It's owning brain space. It's right. It's owning, making your name the first one that people think about, even if they have never bought crypto before and have no plans to, that when they finally do, they think, oh yeah, that company that I never figured I would interact with. And so I knew that was sort of the foundation of a lot of these deals. To be frank, they were not like art first. They were not community first. And we have, particularly with the European soccer market, something that's very notable about that is that the fan relationship with their teams and the players is very different than what it is over here in America. So what I mean by that is, because fandom is like grandfathered in over there, particularly for soccer clubs, right? Where, your great grandfather was a fan of Chelsea, and so everybody down the family tree is a fan of Chelsea. And there's a certain expectation of what a Chelsea player is supposed to do and how they're supposed to handle themselves, et cetera, et cetera. You have to be very, very careful about the risks that you take with your personal brand, because if you as a player release some sort of profit generating activity, whether it's starring in a TV pilot, or it's releasing a new line of clothing, or being the spokesperson for a new clothing brand, to releasing an NFT, and then you go out and you play poorly on Saturday, then Sunday through Friday before the next match day are going to be horrible. And it's people, the players, you have to bring them opportunities that feel like they fit and are on brand. And so my sort of educational process would always revolve around understanding who the person was, what their public facing image and brand is all about, and is there a way to, realistically incorporate that into this growing space. By the way, and you can't do it with everyone, right? I mean, right. People that it's going to be right for, and there's people that no matter which way you try to finagle it, it's just their relationship to their fans, sometimes just doesn't allow it. Now, that was in the early days of that. Now that we understand sort of passion-driven project-driven NFTs, right? It sort of has totally changed how an athlete, a creator can approach this space. And it doesn't have to be all about, here's my art, go buy it, I get money, thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. How did you, at what point in kind of doing all this did you kind of come up with the concept of putting together Habitat Labs and spinning that off?
Sure. So, Habitat came out of a couple conversations with my co-founder Alex. Well, not a couple conversations, a lot of conversations over the winter and spring, and then early summer of last year. Basically, understanding that what we're seeing is so much platform driven. It feels like Web 2. And what I was seeing in terms of the deals coming in, and as I said, just sort of porting the audience over. What would it look like if a brand, a creator, an athlete, a chunk of IP actually owned the entrance and their means of distribution in the space? What would it take to build that? How would we go about doing that? Is there value for that? And I think what we saw over the next year and a half is decidedly, yes, there is value in that if executed the right way. And the opportunities that are unlocked by doing that, particularly around sort of galvanization of community on a certain cause or mission, and access. Fundamentally, it's creators, brands, if they can identify, the 5,000-10,000 people, and we operate in those numbers for now, right? I think the next chapter is what's the 50 and 100,000 for certain brands and IP, and you can identify those people and have a direct line to them, continuously provide value for them. It creates a really healthy relationship between fan/consumer and the creator or the IP. So, Habitat Labs was designed to basically never approach two projects the same. We understand the sort of nuance between every creator and every franchise and their audience, and that there are different ways that they interact and provide value to one another. So we started with the tech stack, have some incredible developers we work with, and basically have like a slate of features that we can turn on and off depending on whatever the end goal is of the project and what they're trying to achieve on that platform. And we do custom development, basically project by project basis, understanding if there's something in our tech stack that we haven't built, we build it, particularly if we understand there's sort of like a potential wave of a market trend coming that could see that feature being particularly valuable. So yeah, that's, Habitat has been really exciting to work on for the last year and a half. And then sort of launching with Spike and with the Visible project really became a no-brainer because the ethos all sort of fit.
So that's a perfect pivot into the current project, the Visible project. So did you guys reach out to Spike, or did Spike reach out to you? Because I know he had interest kind of in the space. How did that all come about?
So we were reached out to on behalf of Spike, and I sat down with him for the first time in November of 2021. And, as I said, I sort of like try to approach all of those conversations, whether I was at the agency or, in a capacity at Habitat Labs. I try to approach it as an educational sort of session conversation. I want to learn about what you have and want to do. And I'm going to teach you what I can about this space, and we'll try to see if we can fit some things together. And that conversation was so fundamentally valuable for us because, I was speaking to someone who understood what it meant to have true ownership over their art. And so Spike going back and systematically purchasing, the rights to his films whenever possible. I think he owns 5 of his films outright now, including, of course, his first one, 1986, She's Gotta Have It.
It's such a fucking great movie. Like it's one of my favorites. It is definitely up there. So, you guys kind of did a like a soft launch kind of rollout that became not so soft. Is that correct? Because it seemed to blow up really fast.
So we had a conversation. We were going to schedule Spike to be on the Gary Vee podcast, and they actually have a friendship, a relationship because of the New York connection, New York Knicks connection. So they know each other, and we were trying to lock in a date for that. And then all of a sudden it was like, hey, here's a date. We can do it. Like, let's go. And it's one of those things where when you get the opportunity to book that, you book that, even if it's on a you're not totally prepared for. And so, we, sort of went into hyperdrive. The great thing about this is that like we started working on the tech for this. It's June now, so 8 months ago, effectively. Not just the tech for it, but like the strategy of the project and really the art of it. So we were somewhat prepared for the launch, but more so like because what we really were still building was our team. And now, we're in a place where we're really excited about the team members that we have, about the art that we have, about the mission and the community that we're building, and, letting the world know about it. And we were planning, and I think, by the way, this is a learning moment for us because there's probably an argument to be made that we should have just started telling people about it, 8 months ago and like slowly started to build them. But what we really wanted to do was be able to provide like immediate value to the community as they flock to this. So instead of having, 8-10 month wait, it's, about 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah. No. The community itself, like I said, I kind of jumped in early when I heard about it, because the project itself excited me. And then like kind of once I kind of joined the community, like the excitement level was kind of, just intensified in that, like, I was like, oh, these guys are doing it right. Like they know the importance and the value is in the people kind of invested in it. And that that like kind of we said earlier that a project can live or die if this is not built correctly, and it was built correctly. But and it's not, you haven't really launched yet. The NFT. Tell everybody like kind of the visible project, what the project is.
Sure. By the way, just curious first, how did you hear about it?
That's a good question. I think someone shared a clip from the Gary V interview is probably what it was. If it wasn't that, so my entry into the space and stuff like that, my coworker back in like early 2017 was like, hey, why don't you just start putting some money in Bitcoin and stuff? He's like, I've been doing it and it's been really crazy to watch. And I was like, I'm not really an investee, guys. And he was like, all right, just put like $75 in. And I was like, okay. And then the end of 2017 happened and I went, oh, this is a thing I do now. So, and then it was very quiet for a few years. And then last year it picked up again. And then, that's when I kind of started pivoting. I had, stuff that I didn't have before. So that's when I started looking at NFTs and stuff. And that's kind of
absolutely how
I came to you. But yeah, so tell them about the Visible Project.
Yeah, sure. So the Visible Project is, it's a Web3 film studio and really film and creativity studio that the idea behind it is, we are taking this piece of legacy IP from Spike's first film, She's Gotta Have It. We sat down and we took every frame of Mars Blackman out of that film. It was a long, laborious process, but we actually took the 35 millimeter out of cold storage. It was in upstate New York, and brought it down to Manhattan. And, every frame of Mars, it comes out to 3945 from that original 35 millimeter, 3,945 total frames. We then worked with some really talented artists to create properties based on the film. And built a generative algorithm that will match and mix and match everything together to create, varied collectability, because we do sort of want to respect and pay homage to the NFT space that has arisen over the past 2 years, and understanding the value of being able to sort of scratch your lottery ticket and see what you get. And what we're doing out of all of that, the sale of those NFTs, the community on Discord and Twitter starting to emerge, is we want to basically work with our community to help create content and experiences in the entertainment space that either it's due to the theme parkization of the movie theaters or the, rapid diversification of streaming platforms and like what that has meant for content and creators to allow people to sort of greenlight what they want to see. So because of who Spike is and the connections that he has in that world, and from my time in the entertainment space, we have access to what I think is really, a Rolodex of the next great generation of storytellers. And what we're going to have them do is submit a proposal on a short film that they want to make. And every Mars NFT is a vote, and you will get to choose, as being part of the community, what films you want to see made. It's sort of the beginning of it there, because then throughout that, we will be introducing the community. And some of this we haven't, released yet. So I'm actually excited to tell you about this right now.
Very cool.
We will be sort of keeping the community tied into the project throughout the production of it, like I'm not sure any project really ever has before. So you can think about things like, and I'm not going to be able to sort of tell you exactly what they are, but things like the ability to have access onto the set every week to recap what's been going on inside the editing room to see what that process looks like. And then, of course, when those films are finished, they're going to live on our platform first on the visibleproject.io behind a token gateway where you have to have an NFT to see the films initially. And at the end of the year, when they're all made, we're going to have a film festival, the Visible Project Festival. It's actually a multidisciplinary music, film, keynote speakers, art, all in person and digital. And we're planning to do it in Brooklyn, New York, of course, because Spike is the de facto mayor of Brooklyn, if you will. Coming out of that, our plan is to basically create a financial mechanism for short filmmakers that doesn't exist in the space right now. And so what that looks like is, I think that because of the excitement around this project, the community that we have being, as engaged as they are, what we want to do is we want to be the first NFT project to actually put content onto a major streaming service. And so we're going to package that as sort of the Visible Project limited series, season 1, take the 5 or 6 best projects that are made out of it as voted on by the community, package that together, and allow the rest of the world to see it.
It's incredible. I've always loved film, and I wanted to be a filmmaker for the longest time before I then decided I was going to be a musician, and then I decided I could never decide on what my entertainment entry point was. But film has always been something very deep in my heart. So that was the other thing that really excited me about this is because it reminds me, much as She's Gotta Have It reminds me of kind of that independent spirit, that kind of ground funded, outside of a studio kind of system, and the idea that you are kind of putting it to a vote is like the democratization of independent cinema, and it's phenomenal to me, like that the project will give the resources for a vision that may not have been able to fund that vision previously, and that's right. That's really exciting. What is the feedback you've been getting on it? Like, just from kind of a filmmaker community, like what is the interest level?
Sure. Well, just on your last point first, and it ties into your question, we're seeing that this is the new studio. Like, the future of studios, the way that projects, at the very least create a floor for success, because one of the hardest things for filmmakers to do, aside from getting funding, is to actually get eyeballs on their projects. Think about the service Vimeo, right? Vimeo is an unbelievable platform. And I would say something like 90% of short films that are made are housed on Vimeo. People also put them on YouTube, but really where they originally live is on Vimeo. Not to like dog on the company, but Vimeo doesn't even have like a featured video of the week homepage. Like you can't even see, you don't have like a collection you can scroll through on Vimeo. And especially in this day and age with projects, with studios making the sure bets, right? Saying we're going to invest in the projects that we know have a floor of success. And that's increasingly being comic book adaptations, right? It's increasingly action films with not as big budgets as they used to have, but still big budgets. And people still feel like, oh, it's a movie theater experience. the feedback we're getting from the community is that this is like sort of long overdue. Why did this technology need to come around for this sort of groundswell of, wait, we want to see diverse stories and we want to be entertained in different ways, be allowed to take place. I think the one thing I will say though is it's an interesting model to say to filmmakers, like, we're going to have this community of people judge if your film deserves being made. And I think that it requires a lot of empathy on the part of our community to understand like the value, both that they bring to the filmmaker, but also like how sensitive it is for someone who, puts a lot of their self into a script, into a pitch deck, into a project that they want to see brought to life. And to bring that to a community of people and say yes or no. Usually they're getting a yes or no in different rooms around the city. But in this instance, they're getting a yes or no from like a large group of people who have said that they want to fund the next great filmmakers. And so, I do just want to say that. And I think that some of the discourse and conversations that we'll have around that going forward will be really healthy and important for our community to just sort of like understand the position of power that you're put in by having this ability to greenlight these films. And there's different ways that we want to do that too, by the way. I mean, I think I gave you sort of the high overarching, roadmap of what we really want to do here. And around the margins of that, I think, are where a lot of value is built. And in particular, that comes around how we introduce filmmakers into the community, because even people that don't get funding do have the chance to attract an entirely new audience base, right? People who are going to follow them left and right and center to see like what they're making next and go back and watch their old films. And so, I'm excited for how we're going to do that, for how we're going to introduce filmmakers into this community, the ability for our community to interact with them, ask them questions, learn from them. Is someone in our community going to be, second grip in production at some point for some filmmaker? I feel like absolutely. And based on what we know about the community, there's a lot of people who are either aspiring filmmakers or they're working currently in the industry in one capacity or another. And, there's the opportunity for some like really healthy, I think, career building to come out of it as well.
Definitely. And it brings us back again to the community. I keep praising you guys on the community you built. But another good portion of that are like your community managers and stuff like that. You have just a very good team of people interacting, and that's like another facet that makes or breaks a project is having the right team. Where did you find your team? Like how did you put them together? Who were you kind of looking for?
Sure. So, a couple different answers to that question. The first is, so Big Brother is, I can credit him for finding, people like Jose and Morgan, and really actually being able to cover different time zones, because we do anticipate that this project will grow internationally substantially, particularly with Spike's, fan base. He's like, they love him in France and at Cannes. He has huge fans in South Korea. And we want to engage with those filmmakers and those communities as well, people from those places. So we were able to, work with Big Brother to build out that team. I want to give a huge shout out to Tisha.
Oh my God, yes.
Community and strategy lead. Tisha, is a remarkable human being and incredibly, the second time I'll use this word empathy in this conversation, but this is probably the more important time. Tisha's ability to be like an empathetic figure in a variety of different ways is what I think has allowed her to, she's not a Web3 native, which by the way, I think is a little bit of a misnomer, because nobody's really been in this space for all that long to call themselves a native.
Sure.
Hasn't been around long enough. But this is Tisha's first project in Web3. And she has just grabbed onto this, grabbed the reins. We're really excited to see her leading, discussions, quizzes in the server, doing movie nights, community AMAs. We have a lot of stuff in store for Tisha. She's only beginning to sort of scratch the surface of her potential. And it's really cool for me to see her grow and flourish in this role. We've spoken a little bit about highlighting different filmmakers. I want to mention quickly that we will be highlighting this week our first through a program we're calling TVP Spotlight. An American filmmaker, Mexican-American filmmaker named Emil Gallardo. Emil created a film called 1, 2, 3, All Eyes on Me. It's a very decorated short. It's won a lot of different competitions and been recognized left, right, and center. And it depicts a school shooting in no uncertain terms. It's a very real, visceral depiction of that. And, when we were talking as a group about, are we prepared to be a forum for this conversation, one of the things that gave me a lot of confidence in saying, a resounding yes, is Tisha and her ability to sort of hold space for more difficult conversations and understanding like how to be empathetic to different perspectives in those conversations, and also understanding the way that different people, whether it's a piece of entertainment, of content, a medium, that a story, whatever it is, that people respond in different ways to different things. And so some of her background and training that has nothing to do with Web3 makes her uniquely equipped to be playing this type of role. And then, the rest of the sort of community leaders, managers, we've all just sort of found a nice rhythm of being in the server, interacting with the community. And now it's just about really building more value around that and showing what we can do with so much of the trust that we've been given by all you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a beautiful place because, like we've said, like the project hasn't even, released, and you already have, this solid base of people, investing their time at this point, and building that kind of relationship is just going to make the investment in the project, I believe, that much stronger. So I'm definitely excited.
I think that like the reality of how quickly people have sort of grabbed onto this, and by the way, because all these projects, they're pieces of clay, right? And there's not a sculptor, right? We sort of all play different roles in evolving it, and it really only is successful not just if people stay engaged, but if they are upfront about what they want to see. And so I've seen like in the server, particularly when we get like negative feedback, I think it's a really great thing because we're figuring this out all together as we go along. We know what the overarching goals are, but we also know that inside of that, there's so much more to be done. And I think the reason people are glomming onto this and wanting to be a part of this is because I think we're filling a need. I think that the need is that the content that we're seeing today, the stories that are being told, the ability to connect over those stories is not where people want it to be. And so let's give people an opportunity to take it where they want it to go.
Yeah, we're missing valuable curators anymore in kind of, we're at the behest of each streaming service to kind of curate and tell us, based off of data points, what we want to see. But like what this is doing is kind of allowing the community to, in real time curate what they want to see. And I think it's an absolutely beautiful project. I'm really excited for it. Do you have a target launch for the NFT yet, or?
We are going to be announcing that probably in the next 3 or 4 days.
Oh, excellent.
And the target date is relatively soon.
Excellent. Very cool.
I will say that it's coming down the pike. We wanted to be really sort of deliberate with the timing around the market and sort of the volatility around that. I'm not sure though that the market is going to stabilize out anytime soon. I don't really want to get into like my macro thoughts because they could be totally off, right? But what I do know is that we have a community of people that are really excited about getting this thing up and running. And it's not really about the macro trends for us anymore. It's about answering to, this community that is ready for this, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, the market right now, being as it is, has it thrown any wrenches in what the plan was to be, or are you kind of allowing the just the project to kind of take the drive?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's really thrown any wrenches. I think for us, it's really about sort of finding the right forums in which to talk about this project. And, so we're really excited about NFT NYC coming up in 12 days now. I'm not sure when your listeners will listen to this, but that's, June 20th, 21st, 22nd in New York City. We will have a presence there. We are going to be popping on a couple more exposure opportunities, mostly things that we feel like are really on brand. I think what's really been damaged in this cycle, this bear cycle, has been the projects that are paying for promotion, that are like ceaselessly trying to share communities back and forth, that are basically, saying this is a potential asset that could 100x. I'm not saying this isn't, that the Visible project isn't. I'm saying that our journey to 100x value is going to be so much more rewarding than just getting to 100x value. So it hasn't thrown a wrench in our plans. I think we've tried to be pretty deliberate all along about this. We're auditing our smart contract right now just to make sure that, and by the way, I think it's something that more projects should be doing is, it's a security measure that really should be required. And like, you should disclose that to your audience, which we will do. And we're going to demonstrate, the security and the transparency of our system. Sort of the last chapter here for us from a developmental perspective, before we release this thing to the world.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I cannot wait. At this time, you want to go through the Jawntlet and answer some questions? All right. This, as always, starts at the top. The one-hit wonders. First one: Billy Joel or Elton John?
Billy Joel.
Yeah, you're an East Coast guy. You got to say it. Like it has to happen. Number two: Debbie Harry or Joan Jett?
This one, I'm going to be totally frank with you. I had to do a little bit of research on Joan Jett.
Okay.
I've always been a fan of Debbie Harry.
All right.
So that's an easy one for me.
All right. Sounds good. Number three: Aretha Franklin or Tina Turner?
Aretha.
Yeah, definitely. Nirvana or Pearl Jam?
I thought that I was going to say Nirvana, and yet I went back through the catalogs, and for me, it's Pearl Jam.
Yeah, 100%. They're just killer songwriters. Like, they just crafted really, really perfect songs. Janis Joplin or Stevie Nicks?
This was the easiest question on the list for me, aside from Billy Joel. It's Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Beatles or the Stones?
Beatles, except for Beast of Burden.
Oh, it's a great song. I do a pretty good cover of it myself. Man.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do.
You got to send me that, man.
I'll send you a clip of it. You can. And the last one of the one-hit wonders: Bohemian Rhapsody or Stairway to Heaven?
You're talking to a failed guitar player, so that you can answer that for you. Very nice. The next section is the top 10 countdown. As I explained to you in our messages back and forth, Jawn can be whatever you want it to be, because that's what Jawn is. So number one, what was your first Jawn when you were a kid? What was the first thing you were obsessed with? So we're actually going to go way back here.
Yeah.
My first words were baby, baby, because of Ooh, Baby, Baby. Which from Smokey Robinson and the Miracles.
Wow, that's a perfect answer.
My dad would put it on when trying to get me to fall asleep.
Wow, that's incredible. Do you still find comfort in that song?
I absolutely do.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because the olfactory sense is the closest one that's linked to our nervous our memory function in our brain. But for me, I think music does something similar in allowing me to sort of find that, foundational like memories. And that song gives me both comfort and relives a lot of memories. Not from when I was just learning how to speak, but,
sure, of course. They say music is the cheapest form of time travel. Number two, what's your current Jawn? What are you into right now?
So for this one, I wanted to highlight one track for you, one song. It's actually called Step by Step by Brax and Falcon. And it's featuring a group called Panda Bear, or a guy called Panda Bear. It's just a great song. It's a feel-good song. I listened to it driving up and down the PCH here in Los Angeles.
That's awesome. I'm not familiar with it. I'm definitely going to have to check it out. I've listened to some Panda Bear. I'm quite a fan. So very cool. Very cool. Number 3, what was your first concert? What was the first live show you went to?
It was the Killers at the Boston University hockey arena. And I got there with my friend and his dad way too early. And we got to the front row, or like right up front next to the speakers, and I couldn't hear for a week. I was like, I love this.
Yeah, that's an addiction that I caught very young myself. Like it's just there's something very weird about the body vibration of very loud music that like there's nothing else that matches that. It's beautiful. Right. Number 4, what was your last concert? What was the last show you went to?
I went to see Bon Iver at the YouTube Theater, which is like sort of like a coffee house type setting out here in Los Angeles. And it was, it was, I think in October. So like the pandemic is still a thing, but back then was very much still, a concern of people. It was a really bizarre setting because it was, he was playing like a lot of his rock, more upbeat hits, and everyone was just sort of sitting there with their masks on. But when he got to some of his other, I think they're kind of like ethereal tracks, it was incredible, transformative experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, I am a big fan. Like he just and it's funny. My girlfriend's a fan of his as well, and hates Taylor Swift, but loves that song that he did with Taylor Swift. Like it just sounds. It's lo-fi goodness. I love it.
It's lo-fi goodness. That's exactly what it is.
Right? It just hits that feel, man. It's a perfect vibe. Number 5, what was your favorite concert? What was the best live show you ever saw?
So obviously this is a difficult question to answer. Any best is a difficult question to answer. The best all-around experience for me was a Coldplay show. I don't love Coldplay's music like I love some other artists, but the pageantry that they put on for their shows, it's outstanding. Yeah.
That's cool. I have a not as one of my favorite concerts or anything, but one of the best live shows I've ever seen, and I've seen them a few times, and I don't even own a single album of theirs, is the Foo Fighters. It's kind of the same thing. Like, like I don't not like them, but live, the energy is just so incredible. Like it's just a very good live show that they put on, I guess, rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins. But yeah. Good stuff there. Number 6, who have you never seen live that you wish you would have? They can be living or dead.
I actually, I went into this conversation still thinking about that question. I think I would have to go, it just feels like the Beatles are a no-brainer to me. But the reason I say that is more so because of the Beatles fever in the 60s in the United States, and trying to like go back there and be a part of that. It's either that or Led Zeppelin at Madison Square Garden.
Yes. Good answers. Number 7, name an unappreciated Jawn. Name something you wish had a little more shine to it.
So I just don't think this has any shine anymore, but it's one of my all-time great feel-good tracks is Saturday Love by Cherrelle.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. Very good. Look, you shining some spotlight on some good stuff here, man.
Cool.
Number 8, what's your favorite album?
So I'm going to give an answer and I'm going to want to change it later.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give it to you now. And I think it's Astral Weeks by Van Morrison.
Oh my God, what a beautiful, beautiful album. Like the sound of the like, there's a very specific thing about that album that I love. And it's the sound of the bass lines on every single one of those tracks. And it's just the way it's mixed. It like hits me in my spine and it'll stop me in my tracks anytime any one of those songs comes on.
I'm just pulling up that album, the track list right here. There's not a song on there that's not incredible.
No. No, I mean, like
So,
Sweet Thing, like is just phenomenal. Way Young Lovers. Yeah. Oh my God. What a perfect album.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's for there.
Yeah. You're not going to change that one. That's a good answer.
Cool.
Number 9, name an artist whose output you'll consume anything they release.
Went totally different genre here for you, but recently it's been J. Cole for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just think he's at the top of the game. I think that the tracks that he goes on and his wordsmithing, it's all like top tier. I think I like take this for what it's worth. I think I like, excellence regardless of genre. So like if something is just objectively fantastic, I'll generally enjoy it. There are limits to that. I don't love screamo, but I know some people do.
Yeah. I've not found music that I don't. No, that's not true. Let me word this perfectly. Because I don't. There's no music that I don't like. But what I will say is I have a very, very thin, very hair thin trigger for contemporary pop country. And it does not take much for a song to push me over the edge and say that I hate it. But
Yeah,
there are some that are like, it's, you know what it is for me? It's fake nostalgia. That's what drives me nuts. And a contemporary pop country is so much fake nostalgia about things that did not happen. Like, oh, remember we were at the truck at the lake. That didn't happen.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about like, I wonder what he thinks about Zach Brown Band. And a lot of Zach Brown Band is fantastic, but a lot of it taps into exactly what you're talking about.
And it's a thin line. It's a thin line. Like if it's done too much, it'll push me over. Like if every song is made up, like I'm not trying to, it's not about an authenticity thing. Like it doesn't have to be 100%, but if you're laying into it too much and then that becomes essentially to me in my head, what the driving force is, it'll push me right over. And that's it.
Totally with you.
The 10th and final one of the top 10 countdown. What is your favorite Jawn of all time? Can be anything you want it to be.
So I stayed with music here. And I just went with a song. This is without a doubt my favorite song of all time is Waiting in Vain by Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Beautiful song. Another cover of mine. We're going to have to get you out to one of my shows.
It's I'll grab my brother. Well, from Berwyn. Next time I'm in town, you let me know when you have a show.
Oh, yeah.
But I was going to say, it's been my ringtone, my alarm that I wake up to for about 5 years is that song. And you would think that I would have gotten tired of it, but all I hear before I wake up is the first three, drumming, brah, and then the song starts. And I'm always hitting it right after the brah. And so I don't hear the rest of the song. But I love that song. That one's it. That's my Jawn.
That is a beautiful, beautiful track. So if anybody is interested in kind of checking out what the Visible Project is, tell them the best way to track you down.
Yeah, for sure. So if you have any questions just for me, you can find me on Twitter. It's Green_thumb. Eliot Greene, my name ends with a E, so Grene. Visible Project is thevisibleproject.io. You can find us on Twitter at The Visible Project. And jump into our Discord space, man, because, we have a good time in there. We have a lot of really cool, interesting people and perspectives. And we think we're pretty welcoming. We hope the community feels that way. Well, the community sets that. So I think they do feel that way. That's where you can find us and, excited to grow and be on this journey. And, Nate, I'm really excited that you're on this with us. Thank you for using this platform to take a minute to talk about this project. It's, I knew that we were going to meet some really cool people when we started this project, simply because Spike exists in this world of really cool people, and people who are chasing creativity and in the film and TV and music space are usually really interesting. But I've really just been blown away and, putting you right at the top of that list. So thank you.
Oh, well, I absolutely appreciate it. And thank you for creating a beautiful, not just a beautiful community, but a beautiful project. Like I said, as a fan of film and as somebody who wanted to be a filmmaker, like I think what you're doing is very, very important and very, very needed right now. in this kind of, confusing space of being able to not just find content, but to get content out there and get it in front of the people who will appreciate it. And I absolutely appreciate everything you guys are doing for this project. So thank you for that. And also thank you for doing this and talking to me today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
My thanks again to Eliot for joining me on the pod today. You can find more about The Visible Project and the generative She's Gotta Have It NFTs at thevisibleproject.io. You can follow The Visible Project on Twitter at visible_project and on Instagram at thevisibleproject.io. And hop on the Discord and join the community, because you know what? You'll find me there as well. If you want to seek out Eliot directly, you can find him on Twitter at green_thumb. That's GREENE_thumb. Links to all of those will, of course, be in the show notes. Please be sure to subscribe to the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from. And hey, you know darn well that you can get yourself a super awesome Jawn Scout merit badge for citizenship of the world just by rating and reviewing us. So why don't you do it? Don't forget to visit www.yothat'smyjawn.com for articles, merchandise, and links to all of the previous episodes of this podcast. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/YoThat'sMyJawn for updates and live streams. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Yo That's My Jawn, and search Yo That's My Jawn on YouTube to find the Yo That's My Jawn YouTube channel. Up there right now, 2 new videos. 1, an unboxing video for more disc golf discs, because as I say all the time, I am a disc golfer. And 2, a remix of the Love from Philly track that G Love released on his new album Philadelphia, Mississippi, by me, with lyrics by me. So check it out. Like and subscribe the heck out of that ish. We want to hear from you. Reach out and touch some Jawn. Well, that's it. Another week, another episode. Thanks as always for listening. Blue skies. Until next time, everybody.
Hey yo, displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. Your taste in music doesn't have to be.
Yo, That's My Jawn is a Lonely Monk production, written and produced by yours truly, Nate Runkle. Theme song by Phil Tyler Music featuring Nate 3.0. Special thanks to Fox Run Brands, DX Ferris, Andrew Scott, Natalie Runkle, and the incredibly brilliant and wickedly stunning Katie Daubney. If you or anyone you know has any ideas they would like to share or any guests they would like to hear on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to us at yothat'smyjawn@gmail.com. Or you can leave an audio message for us and possibly hear yourself on a future episode by visiting anchor.fm/ytmj/message. Until next time, be sure to displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure and shout to the world, yo, that's my Jawn.